This feel like church.
Feel just like church. West Coast boys.
Sauce. This feel like church. Since the days before Christian stars, I knew this would work. Since Daryl, Monty, and Shane been putting in work. Now you just watching the throne while we take them to church.
All right, YouTube world, welcome to The Point. My name is Nixon, and I'm here with
D. Smith.
D. Smith, I'm excited to have engaged with another episode, discussion of manhood, kingdom men.
Excited, bro.
Excited. And you know, it's crazy because, you know, y'all got to go back to the past episodes and y'all might probably understand what I'm about to say right now. Last time we had a discussion, we talked about provider.
Yes.
Men learn how to provide. But we're talking about kingdom men.
Right.
And I said, man, it's only appropriate that we got to talk about the unchurched, because I believe that there are some unchurched individuals that they believe that they're doing things according, you know, the right way. Mm-hmm. But, you know, the way we like to point people to Christ, because we believe that only Jesus Christ could set those standards in terms of what the right way looks like. Right. And you said a very interesting point the last time we met. You know, we started out the conversation in the previous episode, provision. Right. And I said, man, when I got married to my wife, you know, she allowed me to provide, because like you said, immediately we go to finances.
Yes.
And you did a little twist. You had an interesting twist. You're like, as men, we got to provide spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. And I like how you pointed that out, because though we could have the finances, but if you lack the spiritual aspect of providing, then it's like, I mean, what do you gain, right? Because we know spiritually is where it's really at, and I believe that's supposed to be the standard. So, yeah, man, kick us off, man. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, man, listen, that was a beautiful recap, man, and I think you hit it on the head. But before we kind of dive into that portion where we kind of go beyond the finances, you said something that stuck with me, and I mean, it really hit my spirit, and it's I mean, I don't think there's ever a truer statement than what you said. Mm-hmm. When you gave your own personal testimony about, you know, you and your wife, and, you know, she took your hand in marriage. You said that she allowed you. Okay. You said that she allowed you to be that provider.
Yes.
That's key, man. Yeah. I got to tell you, that's key. And, you know, you mentioned earlier about dealing with those who are not necessarily church, or dealing with the unchurched, right?
Yeah, the unchurched,
That's both men and women. Listen, a lot of people don't read scriptures. They don't follow. Mm-hmm. We may have some who don't believe in God at all, whatever the case is. With that being said, listen, our job is to point to.
That's right.
To point to Jesus and to point to that standard. But that woman allowing the man to be the provider is crucial. Yeah. And oftentimes with those who are unchurched, and even those who are church too, you have men and women who kind of grow up in some difficult situations. Mm-hmm. And let me just use a real specific example here real quickly. Mm-hmm. If a woman grows up, you know, maybe not necessarily having a father or that provider, you know, as a young girl, she's had to come up all her life and go get it herself. Yeah. She's had to go work for herself. She's had to go learn, you know, the hard way, you know, trial and error, things of that nature. Well, that builds a certain type of mentality and attitude, right? Problem is, some of those folk get married, right? And then it becomes really difficult, you know, to just kind of, you know, set that aside, who you've had to be for 15, you know, 20 years, whatever the case is, go out there, make it, be independent. Now you all of a sudden have to set that aside because the preacher said so. You know, you've gotten with you've committed yourself to somebody who's in the church now, whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. And now you've got to set aside who you've had to be for 15 or 20 years. And now you have to trust this person with the opportunity and the ability to provide for you. That becomes a bit difficult. Right. And, you know, society, has a very different definition of what provision is all about.
Right.
Which is, why I went the way that I went last episode, trying to expand it beyond just finances.
Right.
Now, with that being said, like we said last time, we want to reiterate again, finances are important.
Yeah.
We are not taking that away, right?
Right.
But society and the way we view things, the culture, our culture, we focus just on finances, and then the person mentally, psychologically, spiritually goes lacking, right? And provision is so much more than just money. You have a lot of people who have money, who are rich, but miserable, right?
Yeah.
There's no unity there in the marriage. There's no trust there in the marriage, right?
Right.
It's all about, if I can use today's, language, it's all about getting the bag, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't have the bag, then some women will tell you straight up. and we're not saying it's just women. Men have that mentality too.
Right.
Yeah. If you ain't making six figures, you ain't got the bag, you ain't no man. What kind of thinking is that? Right? Is that what God intended? And I would suggest that it's no.
Yeah. So we're talking. So last time we had our discussion, as you alluded to, we talked about the kingdom men.
Right.
Because. And we're not kingdom men. We're not all there perfect. This is a constant cycle. You said it, that we're learning.
Right.
We're constantly learning how to do this, especially as kingdom men.
Right.
I don't think people understand that a burden that a husband may endure, the day-to-day burden, right? So, and I'm thinking about the person that's unchurched, and this is why we're trying to help them, to point them to Christ.
Right.
Because even as a Christian, the burdens that we feel, we know that we could take our burdens to the Lord.
Right.
So for the unchurched, let's just say you got the unchurched, the
where
man.
do they go?
Yeah, where do they go, right? So typically, people that I know that are unchurched, and typically they go to things like drinking. They go to a bar. They go casinos. They go to certain things like that to alleviate the void, like the pain that they're feeling.
Right.
The everyday burdens that they're feeling, right? So it's one of those things, right? And it's very hard to say because the world thinks different as us.
Right.
So if a person is unchurched, they're watching this, I want them to understand that like you said, providing is just not about finances. I like how you pointed out spiritual aspect because it ignited something inside of me. Because I can't imagine a world being married without Christ. I like to be real with people. So when I say these things, I like to be honest with myself. Me without Christ, that's dangerous. A life without Christ, that's dangerous.
Absolutely.
Because I think about my previous life. So I can't even imagine a world where there's no Christ, there's no foundation, and me taking a woman in holy matrimony and saying, would you be my wife? If I take a woman in holy matrimony, would you be my wife? And there's no Christ. And I'm saying, you know what, honey? I'm going to provide. Because like you said, and we talked about this, as a man, I'm going to provide. But a male missed that spiritual aspect, that component of speaking spiritual, life into his wife or even within the atmosphere. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. The people that they take Christ, they take God out of their households.
That's it.
It's like there was a time where the Bibles was open and Bibles was read and there was devotions. Now you got these big time marketing media is warring against the Bible because you got things like social media.
Right.
You got things like Netflix. Right. You got things like movies and a lot of distractions. There's more content out there that's being pushed. So when it comes to people that is ungodly, this might be their everyday norm. This might be their norm. Work a 9 to 5. And I'm talking about those that are married because I'm not going to view those that are shacking and
Sure.
No. Sure. Yeah, I'm talking about the ones that are married but they're unchurched.
Right. You said a mouthful there, and I hope that the viewers are getting it. Let me see if I can try to help as well and try to present it another way here. The difference between, as we're saying for this episode, the church and the unchurched, right? The kingdom men and those who are unchurched. Difference is the fact that we depend, and I know this sounds simple, but if I promise you to our listeners, if you let it, it'll bless you. Just sit with it for a minute. The difference between the two is that the church depend on God. Yeah. Right? Now, that's hard. That's difficult for the unchurched, right? We was asking, for that unchurched man, where do they go for direction? Where do they get, guide? Where do they get guidance from? And sad to say, you enumerated some just then. You get it from social media. You get it from, Netflix. You get it from, television, movies, the culture, hip hop, all of that. And all the things that I'm enumerating, I'm not saying that they're all bad, but we don't have to prove, the issues with all of the things we just said there. But the difference between the two, let me get back to that point, is the fact that we depend on God. Yeah. Whereas the unchurched, I would venture to say, and I believe it's safe to say that most of them have had to depend on themselves all their lives, right? And that's why I say you said a mouthful when you said, I can't imagine, being married without Christ, right? Man, and you alluded to how you were back in the day, right? Well, however anybody was back in the day, if you're dependent on yourself, then 9 times out of 10, you're going to fail. We're finite, frail human beings who fall, who fail. All of us, even the church, right? So that's why I think it behooves us to kind of, and I really want to push this point home, with those who are listening, to this particular podcast. The difference between us, it's not like the church. We're so high and mighty, and I like what you said. We're not perfect. We will never push that, especially on this platform. We fall every day. The difference is we know where to go. The standard. Right? Now we're talking about being a man. We're talking about marriage. We're talking about fatherhood, right? Here's the thing. Here's the one thing, or I should say the one person that all three have in common. They have a creator. God created the man. God created marriage. God created fathers. You get what I'm saying? God himself is a father, right? These different functions that we're enumerating, each episode, priest, provider, Lord's willing, next episode, protector. Guess what? God is each of those, right? So I'm saying all that to say this: God is qualified to define everything that we're talking about. He's qualified to tell us how to do everything that we're talking about. Right. So why not go back to look to the standard? Now, if we can get the unchurched to do that, to look at the standard, right? Look at the church, look at the kingdom men as we follow God, but keep your focus on God because we fall, right? Keep your focus on God and let him tell you how to be a man, how to be a father, how to be a provider. Right. And let me practically, say this. Go ahead, and then I'll
let me say this before I forget.
Because I keep talking. I keep talking.
No, and if you look, we're on social media, y'all. If y'all got any questions, like ladies, y'all can ask them some questions. Let me continue before I move forward. So I'm going to be talking about the church and the unchurched, but the main topic is really talking about the unchurched. Right. So I could say the difference because there was once upon a time that I wasn't in the church. Right. So that's why I said I can't even imagine a world with me without Christ. Sure. It's only by God's grace that we're saved, right? Mm-hmm. So marriage within itself is a ministry. Mm-hmm. So when we think about when we get saved and we obey the gospel and God give us purpose. Then the order of things, of course, God loves family.
Right.
Then if it's God's will that you get married, which is God's will that you get married, then that alone within itself is a ministry, and it has purpose. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love what you said the last time we spoke about, instilling those spiritual nuggets into your spouses. Mm-hmm. And it's not even only our spouses, it's our children. Right. So when God blesses us to have children, and I thought about how you said, God provides us with oxygen. God provides us with life. So God is the ultimate provider.
Right.
But he teaches us husband, fathers, how to provide within our own domain, our homes. Mm-hmm. So as God see fit, he blesses us with children. And I'm saying, wait a minute. I was sitting here today. I'm like, whoa, God, God, you also gave man the innate ability to provide time. We got to be able to have time for our children, or even our spouse. Yes. So I know you talk about psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually. And wow, husbands, we be robbing time away from our families. That's another component. And we talk about money, but what about time? Right. What about that time? A spouse may say, honey, you don't spend time with me. Mm-hmm. All you do is work.
Right.
You don't know what I'm going through. Or a son be like, Daddy, you don't spend time with me. You're not at home. So he's not providing that time that it's like they have a need.
Right.
And we're not filling in that void as husbands.
And I can tell you, listen, unchurched as well as church, one of the keys is being able to identify it. Yeah. You got to be able to identify this stuff, right? And I think especially for the unchurched, it may be a little bit more difficult trying to identify it, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't identify it, then how can you even deal with it if you don't even know that's the case, right? Wow. Yeah. And see what's really happening, because I really want to say some stuff, but I'm trying to behave, because we're going somewhere with these series of lessons.
Yeah,
right?
I know.
But let me just say this: there's forces out there that are strategic with this. It is hard for me to just run over that and not say nothing.
I know.
And the reason why I want to point that there is because that man needs to be able to know, church, unchurched, you need to be able to identify and see that it's not just happenstance, right? And here's the key. Because let me just deal with this specific example you gave.
Yeah.
Time, right?
Yeah,
Father, Daddy, I need time. The wife, baby, we don't spend time.
Right.
And the man will justify it by saying, hey, but I got to work. I got to make money, right? That's part of being a provider. And this is the strategy with the enemy and with, these systems that are crafted, that are very much a part of our life. They're entrenched in our culture, right? Everybody's got a 9 to 5, and I'm just kind of just saying that out. I know everybody don't have 9 to 5, but majority of folk got to work 9 to 5. Think about that. Your job takes up the majority of your time. You barely have time for your family, because once you get home, you got to eat. Then you got to sleep. How much time? We sleep in 6 to 8 hours. Then you're working. You get up, got to work. Everybody got to run, get ready, scramble, run, go here, go there. You got to go to work. If the wife working, she got to go to work. Kids got to go to school, and then there's barely any time for family, right? Those are systems that are in place that pulls, specifically we dealing with men, that pulls men. So here it is. I want to show you, and this is the strategy of them. Let me just call them who they are, them devils and them demons, because they will use truth to their advantage. You get what I'm saying? Because a man is supposed to work. A man is supposed to provide as best he can financially, right? But how can that man, especially the unchurched, who you want to focus on, see that, I'm supposed to be providing? Watch it. spiritually, emotionally, mentally, psychologically, all the other leads we can think of. He's supposed to be providing all of these things for his wife and his children. How does he do that? You get what I'm saying?
Wow.
That's a responsibility on us as the churched kingdom men to help them see that. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
There's so much that we can say about this. And I do want to reiterate the other piece to that again, because you do have a lot of unchurched men who are dealing with unchurched. They're in unchurched situations. That woman is unchurched, and they could be church too. But the ability to have that woman allow the man, that's a key component, man. Because trust me, you can have men who are ready to do some of the stuff that we're naming here.
Right.
But his hands are tied if that woman won't let him.
Wow.
You get what I'm saying? If I'm supposed to provide for my wife emotionally, mentally, psychologically, but let's say she had a tragedy growing up where it keeps her reserved, right? And all her life she's had to depend on herself. She can't depend on anybody else. Her trust was violated in some way, shape, form, or fashion. For a lot of people, that's difficult to let go, to let somebody in who they've married be there for them emotionally, right?
Yeah.
Some other practical things out there, marriage counseling, therapy, that type of stuff. Since we're focusing on the unchurched, those types of things can help you. But ultimately, with what we're trying to do, we're pointing to God.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you said a mouthful here. And if y'all see me, if I reached out, that was my other half that was calling me. So
he had to provide at that moment. Just
so I know if there's we're using this term unchurched, right? And I know if a man watching us, they might be on their YouTube watching us, right? Like, man, what these dudes talking about unchurched?
Yeah.
Right? We talking about those that are called. We are called the ecclesia. We are the church. We are the followers of Christ. We are Christians. Mm-hmm. So when we're referring about the unchurched, we're talking about those that are not followers of Christ.
Right.
And so our dialogue, our discussion is really trying to motivate or encourage you to have a relationship with Christ, because we believe, I was in a past episode and I said, what, God's way of doing things work.
Right.
It goes back all the way back. I'm not going to get into the fall of man, Adam and Eve. It goes back all the way back to the garden when man decided that they didn't want God's wisdom, that they wanted to utilize their own wisdom, to decipher what is good and evil. And then Jesus came back to fix things and put us in right relationship with him. And that's why I alluded to earlier that a life without Christ, it would have been dysfunctional.
Yeah, for sure.
I would have been out of order, right?
For sure.
So when we talk about the unchurched, my heart goes to the unchurched, especially if a man that is married, because I already know as a married man, you already carry a level degree of burden.
Right.
Right. And so I respect people that are married. That's number one, whether or not they're in the church or not.
Right.
Because I said this to a woman. I believe I said this to a man as well. I said, I told this to a sister. I said, if a dude proposed to you, that means he really love you. Mm-hmm. I said, you know how hard it is for a dude to commit? Mm-hmm. Dudes have a hard time committing. You and I both know that. Yeah. Like, dudes will go from this woman to this woman, this woman. Sure. But a dude that really has a heart and say, man, you know what? This is a good woman. I'm going to propose to her. But not knowing if he's unchurched, it come up with a different set of responsibilities. The woman has a responsibility to play, but he also have a responsibility to play. But I don't think that man that's under those circumstances fully understand that, yeah, you're doing it the right way, dude. Like, you're doing it the right way by proposing to her, by getting married to her.
Right.
But you gotta have Christ as that foundation.
Right.
Because what God does is like God will sit him down come here, man, young man, or man, let me teach you how to be a husband. And like I said, this is an ongoing process because we're going to fall. We're going to fail. I said, like you said in the previous episode, I said, man, D, like there was times that I didn't even understand my wife emotionally. I wasn't able to provide for her in that sense. And we are constantly growing. We're learning from one another.
Right.
And I think that's only with counseling, fellowship with other godly couples, and even God's wisdom. So for the unchurched, in terms of how to provide, because I talk to men that are unchurched, men, when they want to get wisdom, we talked about those things where they can go, but 9 times out of 10, they'll go to another man. Right. Man, let me tell you what I'm doing. Right. And it be things like the craziest stuff you will hear. Mm-hmm. And as a Christian, man, I'll be like, nah, man, that's not how you do it. Right. So I think this is important. So it's not to place judgment on a man that's married and he's not going to church, but we just trying to highlight that God's way of doing things work. Right. We'll mess things up without God. That's just the way it is, and that's just the way it's always going to be.
Right. And let me say this, because from time to time I'm speaking to those who are not necessarily Christians, as well. I know we keep saying unchurched, but I'm not Christians, don't necessarily follow God. Lately there's been a need for the unchurched, like they're looking for, as they'll say, the higher power or the energy. You'll listen to some of these celebrities. I've been kind of watching them too. They'll just say the universe, right? We'll put it out in the universe, right? And people will just say, "Oh, I'm good." You know what we like to say these days and times now? Yeah, I get good vibes. The vibe,
or energy, right?
Energy. There it is, energy and vibes, right?
Yeah.
Listen. Don't be ashamed to say God.
But sometimes you got to identify. We got to say, hold on, are you talking about Jesus? Because everybody be throwing God out.
But I'm talking about those who are referring to God.
Oh, okay.
They ain't, listen, I ain't talking about them folk out there that's,
that's a whole nother. God, and you see them hold on a minute.
No, trust me. They're referring to God. But I think a lot of times they try to be politically correct, right? And so so they'll say things that are very general, right? And they'll just put it in there, the higher power and all that. Don't be ashamed to say God. Don't be ashamed to say Jesus, right?
Jesus, yeah.
And there's I know we keep going back to it, this is spiritual attack and all that stuff, but I have to do that because that's what it is and it makes sense. We have to get back to defending the scriptures too, because the scriptures, watch this, point to Jesus. They point to God. They point back to the Creator, right?
Yes, sir.
Hence this platform, DA, divinely assisted point, because we're pointing back to Jesus as well. So I'm saying all that to say this: point to God, right? So that unchurched, or the ones who are not Christians, even atheists and things of that nature. Yeah. Listen, we point to Jesus. So you said it best, and I think that's the wonderful way to put it. The foundation. God as the foundation. Christ as the foundation. Because guess what? We as Christian men still, he was talking about, there were times in his marriage where he didn't understand his wife. Guess what? I'm still going through some of that. We're learning. I still struggle with some of this stuff and have to figure it out. But I go back to the one who is stronger than me.
Yes, sir.
Who knows more than me.
Sir.
Who created me, created what I'm in, created what I'm trying to do and accomplish.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And so one thing else I want to say about this here too, because marriage is such a beautiful thing. It really is.
It is.
It really is, right?
It is.
Marriage is one of those phenomenons that represent God, right? And I think that's what, a lot of people, churched and unchurched, we miss it a lot of times. Marriage is a representation of God. God, as revealed in Scripture, is Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That's community, right? That's 3 in 1. So when that man and that woman come together, right? When I married my wife,
yeah, come on, Doc.
Listen, you're looking at me right now, She's not here, right?
Right.
But we're one. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And then the scripture teaches us in the beginning that man shall leave his father and his mother, and he will cleave unto his wife. They shall become one. And then they says something very interesting there. They become one flesh, right? Which alludes to what we know. What it's saying there. The one flesh act, the consummation of the marriage, sex, right? And then sex relation brings about children, right? And this is such an interesting phenomenon because children are a reflection of the one flesh, right? When I come together with my wife, we become one flesh.
Right, right.
That one flesh, watch it, is different from me by myself. That one flesh is different from her by herself. Before we got married, before you and your wife got married, it was just Nick and your wife. It was just me and my wife. We got married, new person created. Who's that new person? The one flesh.
Right.
Now watch this. That one flesh gets represented with our children.
Yeah.
Right? That's the manifestation of it. So marriage, family, it all is a representation of God. Look at Jesus's ministry, and I'm gonna behave and shut up because I know I talk a lot. But look at Jesus's ministry. When Jesus was walking this earth, he was walking and he was telling his disciples. He said, "Listen, when you see me, you see the Father."
That's right.
Come
that's
on
what
now.
he said. Yeah, that's what
so
he
when
said.
I see you, I ought to see your wife.
Yeah. That's right.
When I see your wife, I ought to see you.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
The oneness. Right? I can keep going, but let me just go ahead and defer it to my brother right here.
I just want to, as we close, because we're about to wrap it up, man. It's, I always get good. I guess this is my message to the unchurched. It's more so of encouragement.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, it's very hard for men to commit. I believe it's easier for women to commit than a dude. Dudes, we be going through all kind of stuff before we make a commitment. And that's why I said, when I told a sister, I said, hey, if a dude proposed to you, that means he really love you.
Yeah.
And I said that because if a man would only commit to Christ,
right,
knowing that the love of Christ, the love that Christ had for him, like God could take him on an adventure. Like, in other words, he would not only wake up with purpose, he would not only, identify his God-given purpose, but when he do get married, he'll take ownership to being that protector, provider, that priest. And then it's hard for a person that's unchurched because so many distractions. And like we said, who do they go to? Right. Well, they may stumble upon this, YouTube channel or this YouTube podcast, and they may hear the words that's coming out of my mouth because, like I said, I was once unchurched, and they had to take a dude. I share this story all the time. This dude walked up to me, and I had to humble myself. So in order for a man to receive the word, to receive love, he got to humble himself. Because men, we have pride, we have egos. We like, you can't tell me anything.
There it is.
So what happened is, for me as a man, a young adult at the time, a dude he politely walked up to me. He said, man, can I talk to you about someone? I said, who you want to talk to me about? He said, I want to talk to you about Jesus. He said, are you open to, and I said, yeah, I'll talk about Jesus. I mean, you could talk to me about Jesus. And he must have spent about 10, 15 minutes to talk to me about Jesus. And I went home that day. I was like, God, I'm not right with you. Yeah. But what God was doing, that seed was in my heart. Sure. So God at that time had a plan to bring me into covenant with him. And I think what a man has to do, when somebody is presenting Christ or presenting the gospel to him, he got to bring himself low. Yeah. He gotta bring himself low. You can't be prideful. I done hear dudes talking to dudes like, man, don't talk to me about God. I got God in my heart, dude. I don't want to hear nothing about that. And then at that point, I'd be like, look, I dust my feet off and keep it moving. Yeah. And I think that's what it is men, we gotta learn how to humble ourselves. Because the Bible says if we humble ourselves, he's going to exalt us. But once we exalt ourselves, we will be humbled.
Yeah.
We will be humbled.
Yeah.
So I think men got to take that into account.
Man, you said it right there, bro, because I was going to head that way. You said it's hard for men to commit, but then you worked your way into that man being humble. And I was going to say, because my message was, listen, it's hard for men to open up and say, I need help.
Ooh, yeah.
That's that humbleness you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Especially when a society, I mean, the whole culture is postured in such a way to say, to just keep that man hard, right? You better not cry.
Yeah.
Get up. You ain't hurt. All these type things, right? You gotta be a man. And man is synonymous with being hard and power and strength. Weakness is nowhere in that, culture's definition of what a man is.
That's right.
Right? And when you come before God, because remember, because I'm getting ready to end here, when you come before God, you have to humble yourself. You have to humble yourself. That's the only way you are going to receive the benefit. You can't stand before God like you got it like that, like you on his level. It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
So we've said enough, and hopefully this was a blessing to you. We had a whole lot of fun. This was exciting for me. I love talking.
It was good.
Yeah, this was awesome. Provider, that was awesome. So thank y'all for hanging in there with us. Tune in for the next episode. It is Da Point, D.A., Divinely Assistant. My name, Brother Smith, D. Smith.
And Brother Nick.
Signing out. Love y'all.
Peace.
This feel like church. Since the days of For Christian Stars, I knew this would work. Since Daryl, Monty, and Shane been putting in work. Now you just watching the throne.